In the previous lecture, we covered how to store our progress when going through a large word list. This allows us to pause and resume so that we can stop our cracking session and then come back at a different time and then start the session from where we left, which is very handy when we have a large word list. Another issue that we might face when you're using a large word list is the disk space. So a large word list would basically just take a lot of space from our disk. The solution to this is to generate the word list using Crunch and pass it on the fly to aircrack-ng. So basically we're going to be using Crunch to create the word list like we've seen before, but instead of saving the word list on disk, we're going to make it produce the word list on screen. So the result is going to be very similar to what we got when we opened our word list with John the Ripper in the previous lecture. And then we're going to pipe that output to aircrack-ng, which will read that as input and process the word list on the fly as it's being generated on Crunch. This way the word list will not be stored in a specific file and it won't take a lot of disk space. Now let me show you how to do that, and it's going to become more clear. So first of all, before I do the whole command, I'm just going to show you the command that we usually use with Crunch. So we usually do Crunch, and then we do the minimum number of characters followed by the maximum number of characters. And I'm going to set both to 8 because this is the minimum number of characters that you can use in a WPA password. Then we usually specify the characters to use to generate the word list. Now I'm not going to specify any characters right now because I want to use all the characters. So if I don't specify any characters, Crunch will use A, B, C, D, E, F, G all the way up to Z by default. So all I have to do now is just do -O to specify the file to save the word list to, and let's just save it to all.txt. Now I'm going to hit enter. And as you can see, this file is going to be huge. It's going to be 1 terabyte, 1750 gigabytes, and this much megabytes. So it's going to be a huge file, and I actually don't have enough space on my disk to store that file. So I'm going to do Control-C. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to run the same command, and I'm just going to omit the -O argument. So what I'm doing right now is Crunch. I'm telling it that I want you to generate passwords of length 8, and I didn't specify any characters because I wanted to use all characters A to Z. Now if you want to use specific characters, you can just type them in here, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 1, 2, 3, as I showed you before. So I'm going to hit enter with this. And you'll see that it's still telling me that this is going to take 1 terabyte, 1750 gigabytes, but it's displaying the result on screen. It's not storing it in a file. And if we let this run for a long period of time, it'll actually display all possible combinations of characters that have a length of 8 characters and contain the characters A to Z. Now I'm going to do Control-C to this because this is not useful for me. I'm just doing this to show you. But if you notice, the output right now is very similar to the output that I got in the previous lecture when I opened my word list using John the Ripper, when we were doing the pause and resume process. So you can see that the result is being displayed on screen for me now, which is very cool. So what I want to do right now is I want to pipe this result. So we usually pipe using this character like we've seen before. So what I want to do right now is I want to pipe the result of this command to aircrack-ng. And like I said earlier, this command is producing a result very similar to the result that we got from John in the previous lecture, which means the output right now is exactly the same output that we got from John in the previous lecture. So the command that we're going to be passing this to can be exactly the same command that we used in the previous lecture, and it should work. Therefore, all I'm going to do is I'm going to do aircrack-ng, and I'm going to give it the BSS ID of my target network. Then I'm gonna give it -w to give it the word list. And just like I did in my previous lecture, I'm gonna do a dash to tell it that use the output of the previous command as the input for the word list. Then I'm gonna give it the handshake file, which is called handshake01.cap. And that's it, I'm good to go. So we're doing a crunch 88 to generate passwords of length 8 from A to Z. And again, you can use any crunch command right here. You can use any combination, any characters, any pattern, exactly the same way that I showed you in the crunch lecture. Then we're not using a -o option because we don't want it to save anything on disk. We want the result to be displayed on screen. And then we're piping that result to aircrack-ng. Now to aircrack-ng, we're giving it, I actually should not have a space here. So we're giving it the BSS ID of the target network. We're giving it the dictionary, and we're not actually giving a name for the dictionary. We're only giving it a dash. And this is because we're telling it that I want you to use the output of the previous command as the input. So this is exactly like we did in the previous lecture. And then we're giving it the file that contains the handshake. Now if I hit enter, I misspelled aircrack, so it's like this. Now if I hit enter, and as you can see now, aircrack-ng is working. It's taking the passwords generated by crunch on the fly and using them as the dictionary. So the word list is not being stored on my disk. My disk will not get full, and this way we'll be able to use huge word lists for cracking. The only problem right now is this word list is really big, and there is no way we can go through it within one session. So it'll be great if we can save our progress and be able to stop and continue whenever we have the time. So in the next lecture, I'm going to show you how to combine what we learned in this lecture and in the previous lecture so that we can use a huge word list and use it directly with aircrack-ng without saving it on disk, and also be able to stop and resume our progress.